Welcome, everyone. Where did my script go? Hi, my name is Angie Sutton. Welcome to Rainbow Space Magic Con 4.0. This is the keynote, building an online community and funding your art with this community by Laser Weber. Before they introduce themselves, I will go over a few logistics. You're welcome to use the chat to talk to each other and share recommendations in a respectful manner. If you'd like to submit a question, please put a question mark before it so it's obvious for us to notice. There will be time in the second half for questions, but feel free to write them as you think them. After the panel, we'll be hanging out for happy hour, and we'll be also continuing the conversation in our Discord. Without further ado, Laser, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Angie. Thank you, everybody. Hello. I know you exist. I could see your numbers, but feel free to say hi in the chat so that I don't feel so alone and so scared. We've been tuning in throughout the day today. Sorry for sneaking up on you there. Who was this? Alvacat. My intention was not to scare you. But if I did, maybe you'll learn something from that. I guess I don't know. Hi, I'm Laser. I'm here surrounded by ukuleles because I am a musician. But I work with other artists as well, and I'm going to talk to you about building an online community and funding art with your community. I know that there was some talk earlier today about mailing lists, and I'm not going to talk about it a ton, but I'm very glad that people talked about email lists because that is my main, I would say, religion is email lists and making sure we have them. So I'll be doing sort of a similar parallel thing, and I hope that you can take or leave the things that I say. Maybe if you could come away with this with one idea that will help you, that would be amazing. Can I just get a concept from the chat? Is everybody an author? Is that where we're at, or are we creators of different kinds, or just kind of curious about the world of art? Yes.
Most of them are, yeah, authors. I know, at least from prior, but we'll see what they come with. There we go.
Author
and a crocheter.
There we go. That's it. Wonderful. Okay, so yes, today is building an online community and funding your art with this community and musician. Wonderful. Or how to find fans that want to pay for your art. So first, I have these questions that kind of help you identify if this presentation was targeted for you. So let's talk about it. Are you the kind of person who has an amazing idea for something, or don't have don't have the money to make it real? Are you the kind of person who, I know that there are people who will love my art or my writing or my books, but I don't know how to find them. I'm inconsistent posting on social media and I don't know how to build a community. My thing is pretty niche and I'm barely able to describe it, let alone promote it. That's where I'm at most of the time. Promoting yourself on social media makes you anxious, or honestly, I hate the idea of marketing myself with the power of 1,000 cents. If you're any of these things, you can drop a number in the chat. This just kind of helps me get an idea and also helps you maybe put a name to the place where you are right now. I think at the moment I am all of them on different days, and that's okay. That's okay. I'm getting a 5 from Angie. I'm getting a 2. Awesome. Wonderful. I think a lot of us are in this place where, like, I'm making something, and if you're making something that you truly love, chances are there's somebody in the world who is going to love that thing as well. You just got to figure out how to find them, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. Amazing. So who am I? I'm Laser. Here I am in Animal Crossing. That's a helpful way for you to see me. My social media and crowdfunding story is this. In 2014, my band, the Double Clicks, wanted to make an album, but we couldn't afford to make it. And we've never been able to get people, I've never been able to get people like bookers or labels or agents or, all of those things to listen to me. So we launched a Kickstarter for $18,000 and we ended up raising $80,000. And both my sister and I became full-time musicians. Since then, we've raised a lot of money on Kickstarter to fund albums that have topped the Billboard charts, and I have also become a consultant. So I work with people who make music, film, comics, games projects. Recently, I've worked with the presidents of the United States of America, the band, Maria Bamford, Sandeep Parikh from the Guild. just to help people navigate the world of internet crowdfunding. I'm officially endorsed by Kickstarter, and I also have a book that I know Angie could hold up called Crowdfunding for Musicians that was published by, there we go, there we go. It's blurry, that's not intentional. Oh, there we go, we got it. Amazing. It is very helpful to me to see the kind of stuff you want to do in the chat, so please keep chatting. Okay, but let me talk to you about why crowdfunding has been the thing that has made my life better. So I started as a musician. Now I make theater and I write. I do all of these things, and it is incredible to me to have this freedom and to not feel like, well, I could make something forever and no one will ever see it. For me, I like people to see it. You can build your own audience, and you have that audience to offer to other people that you might want to work with. You can make your own art and own the art you make, and you also are impressive to everyone, by which I mean I moved to Los Angeles thinking, finally I'll be able to be part of the system. And as soon as I got there, I realized everybody who's trying to make TV and make art wished that they could just make their own thing and have their own audience. And the thing that I'd done of creating my own audience and creating my own way to fund things is actually what everybody had been looking for, even if they are far more successful than I am. So that's why I like crowdfunding. And here are my values. Sharing your genuine and your entire self, creating a genuine connection with your community, creating art without gatekeepers, and finally, and I think this is important, creation, completion, and growth, aka you can only control yourself. You can only control the things that you do. So maybe you could just keep making stuff until you get good enough at making stuff that people can't ignore it. And that's sort of my philosophy. But let's jump into the meat of this. So these are my principles of an ideal audience relationship. If you're trying to build an audience that is yours, a community that is yours, and you eventually want to ask them for money, especially crowdfunding money, where they have to trust you before the thing is actually made, you want an audience that has these three things. You want them to be accessible to you. You want them to be engaged, and you want them to be big enough that they can fund your life. So that's quantity, accessibility, engagement, quantity. These are the things that I just said. So let's start with accessibility. You and your fans or your community are friends, and you need to be the one friend who is easiest to hang out with because you make all the plans, do all the follow-up texts, host all the parties, and anticipate everybody's needs. And this also means posting the right stuff on social media the right way, which is its own thing that I probably won't talk about that much today. But when I talk about accessibility, I mean not being that mysterious person who just kind of posts a picture of your book cover and then disappears, or makes it so that you have to go Google how to actually back your project or find your Patreon. Let's make it easy for people to access you, and make the audience easy for you to access, because you need to be able to tell them when you're making stuff. And that's why you need an email list. Now, I think email is becoming saturated in the way that Twitter and Facebook were getting saturated. Everybody has an email list these days, but I still think that it is really important to have one. And I think that thinking about how you're going to access your audience before you try to find your audience is really important. You want to be able to have this, for example, email list sign up before you have a video on TikTok with 100,000 views and know where to show those people to go next. You should always be having a next step for this audience to take. All right. Next up is engagement. This is my favorite, I think. Basically, the more time your fans or your community spend with you, the more your art becomes part of their identity. And I think you probably can think about this in your own world of like the people whose books I've read. If I've read 10 John Scalzi books or 7 Becky Chambers books or whatever, I've spent so much time with that person that their content, their art, becomes a part of my brain and becomes a part of my identity. So how can you become a part of people's identity before they even spend money on you? How can you become a part of their identity so they have to spend money to get the next step, right? And I call that the internet hole of art. So if you can create videos, can create um, little pieces of internet, and I'm going to show you some specific examples for people to spend time with, or if they go to an event that you host in real life, if they spend a long time having a conversation with you, I'd much rather go try to buy the book of somebody I had a 20-minute conversation with in a bar than somebody who just handed me a flyer, right? And that's what engagement's all about. Um, and also people want to know who you really are, and they can tell if you're faking it, right? And that doesn't mean I need you to tell everybody the details of your divorce and your life. I just mean what do you enjoy? What is your genuine interest in why you want to create things? And honestly, if it's money, that's fine. If it's I care about this thing, I've always been a real weird nerd and this is the only way I can feel like myself, like all of those are totally legit things. But telling your fans your story is probably the best way to get people to be invested in what you do and want to eventually give you money. I think we all know as creators, as storytellers, that storytelling is the main way that people process information. So if your story can be part of their story, or if they follow your story and they want to be part of it, I think that's really beautiful. And the last one is quantity. Now this is usually what people come to me for when they want to hire me. They say, well, like I want to make $50,000, and I think I could probably I could do that with 10,000 people. And to that I say that's a great idea, but without thinking about accessibility and without thinking about investment, the quantity isn't really going to help you, right? If a new fan shows up on your page and all it is a link to a Kickstarter, right, or a link to a Patreon, and they have no idea who you are or what you make, then they're probably not going to click that button. But if you have a page that, for example, a full page of art that they can engage in, you can immediately capture them from your email list, and you can start telling them your story and earn their friendship or learn their stories. Then getting new fans is going to be easier, right? It's going to be easier to get new fans if you already have a book that they can read or whatever. It's hard to get fans for a book if you've never released a book before, or if you've never released your 3D animation. All right. So how do you find fans? Well, I'm only interested in genuine connection, right? Because big social media numbers aren't going to help you unless they're real. Therefore, I'm not here to tell you about ads. I've worked with tons of people who have purchased followers. I've worked with a lot of people who have gotten a big audience that isn't for the thing they actually want to do, the world of a pretty girl who has a bunch of men following her that don't want to pay for her art. They just want to look at pretty pictures. I mean, that's helpful in a way. Like some of those people are going to pay for your stuff, but a lot of them aren't. And I think that knowing who you are before you start is probably a good idea, and remembering that not every single follower is there for the right reason if you're not telling them what you want them to be there for. So I'm about to talk about my 3 favorite strategies for how to get new fans. And I know a lot of us, if we're writers or whatever, we think, well, we can't put out content because we write whole novels. So I'm going to give you some concepts as well about that. But I encourage you to keep an open mind. And also, I'm going to have a little bit of homework in here. So if you want to write down some of this homework to think about something you could do, I really encourage you to do that. So here are my 3 favorite strategies. Number 1 is collaboration, which is sharing audiences, getting a new audience by providing value to another creator. Community, grabbing an existing community by sharing your art that you think they will like. And connection, grabbing a new audience by creating new art for them based on a shared interest. Right now, I'm in this place where I keep forgetting who I am as a creator, and I keep forgetting what I really want to make. And then I remember that if I make something that my perfect fan can't help but share, that's the best possible scenario, right? You can't make something for everybody. Nobody in the world is going to be for everybody. And the more that you water yourself down to try to be for every person, the less interested any particular person is going to be. But if you get out there and create something that is irresistibly good to one person, they're probably going to dedicate their life to that piece of art. And I think we all probably have a thing that we can think about of a Mercedes lackey quote or whatever that has helped define our identity. Let's jump into these, shall we? Collaboration. So when if I started, if I had a big page of videos or a big page of, short stories, and I was like, okay, how do I get people to come see all of this art I made? This would be one of the first strategies I would recommend. Collaboration. Let's make something together. So if you make something with another artist, a writer, a musician, the benefit for you is those people's fans will check you out and you'll have a new piece of art and a friend. The benefit for that person is your fans will check them out. Cool art, friendship all around. And the benefit for the fans is new discoveries all around. Doesn't that sound wonderful? I think it does. Here are some examples of collaboration items that I have found that are easy and fun to do. So you can see on the screen here, Jesse Kwok, Jesse Kwok might be here, has this list of hopeful science fiction stories. And that's my genre. I love hopeful science fiction. So I just Googled and found this list. Now, Jesse Kwok's book is on this list, which it absolutely should be, but it also has a list of other people like, well, I know I like Douglas Adams, so I'll probably like Jesse Kwok and everybody else on this list, right? I did a very similar thing here, music for nerds by women and non-binary folks, right? When my band was a band with women and non-binary folks, now it is a band with a woman and trans man. This was a list that I made to like say, maybe you'll like some of these people who are more famous than me, some people who you've never heard of. And by the way, also, I'm going to be on this list. And everybody on this list shared it. People could opt in. We commissioned some art, and it created this nice little community and a place for fans to get some cross-pollination. Does that make sense? And then Travis McElroy, who's the internet's best friend, self-proclaimed, did a similar thing where he would say, it's time again, anybody got an online job? Share it here so everybody can support you. And this is a really good way to get followers because everybody who wants you to feature them is going to follow you. But also it's just really nice and wholesome and delightful and a good way to build up goodwill and probably meet some cool people. Second way, so this was lists, this is guests. I think a lot of us have listened to a podcast. Maybe you listened to a podcast because somebody you like was on that podcast and you hadn't necessarily listened to that podcast before. That is a great way to get new fans. And it's a great way to get work because you created your own work, right? I've always been very frustrated at the fact that because I make weird art, I don't necessarily get invited to play the big shows, right? But if I make my own show, I'm always invited. You're always invited to your own party. So that's been a big principle I've followed. So you can see some examples here. I decided to write a robot musical a few years ago. So I decided to interview two of my favorite authors who write stories about robots, Martha Wells and Becky Chambers. Had them on a little just live stream. I didn't even launch a whole podcast for it. We just decided to do a couple episodes back at the beginning of the pandemic, and it was really fun and lovely. I used to have a monthly online show where we'd invite other nerdy musicians on, and that was another really fun way to bring people on. It was an hour-long stream every month, which nowadays feels lazy in the world of live streaming where people are doing 9 hours a week minimum. But it was a really fun way to do our own thing, but also have something we can offer to new friends that we make in the music industry. And then I also did another thing called a podcast called Fan Funded, which I recommend, by the way. We have a lot of interviews with authors and other people where basically I just asked all my friends to tell me their best independent artist advice. And so it was a really fun way to meet new independent artists. Third thing, so we had lists, guests. This is the one that is a little bit more of an ask, right? Creation. So can you ask another artist to create something with you? My favorite example in the world of nerd music is Wootstock. There's a great band called Pollen Storm. Has anybody heard of Pollen Storm? Delightful, but by themselves probably can't play, the Swedish American Hall, right? They created a bill with Adam Savage and Will Wheaton and a bunch of other guests, where they would put on a huge show and they would open for it, right? And so they were willing to put in the work to produce a show, and in return they got to kind of build a great big coat of coattails that they could ride and also create something really amazing. And they're known in my industry as just people who are really good connectors, really talented artists in their own right, and just everybody wants to invite them because they do the work and they invite people in. So Woodstock is a really great example. This video here called Mansplainer was another artist, Jonathan Mann, invited us to play a song with him. And I will say the reason that I recommend that I have this as an example is because Jonathan Mann wrote the song, he edited the video, he did all of this work, and invited us on board because as a way to boost the video. And therefore we said yes. I get a lot of messages from people who want to write a song together or who want us to work on something. And I usually say no, because like, hey, that sounds like a lot of work. But if you're willing to do the work, I'll probably help along. And then here I have Borkin Telephone. And this is a guy named Peter Chakowski that you absolutely must check out. He has a few different projects, but basically Peter is a writer who wanted to figure out a way to build an internet following. So he created all of these incredible projects where he would bring in and pay a lot of incredible musicians or writers or artists or cartoonists to make these big compilations, and he would be the center of it. But he would also make it really easy to collaborate with him. And Borkin Telephone specifically was an incredible project because it was basically one person started with a song. You could listen to it once and then you had to go record your own version of that song. Not a whole lot of work because you by very nature couldn't remember or really know what was happening in the song. But he got to work with all of the people he wanted to work with in the nerd music industry and became one of those people you would call if you were in town and you wanted somebody to do a show with. These days, he's making like millions of dollars on Kickstarter for his writing work. And I really recommend checking him out because a lot of people say, like, if you're a writer, how do you get attention on the internet, right? How do you get attention on the internet if all you do is write? Because everybody wants videos and everyone wants, photos and all of this and streams. But he has really figured out how to do it. And I recommend checking him out because you can find him at Rock Paper Cynic. I'll write that in the chat. Because he is probably he's a person that I'm so inspired by his journey. All right. Collaborations. Here are some guidelines. First of all, be the hardworking friend. Like I said, if the goal is for you to build your audience, then you should be doing the work. So be the person who sets deadlines and that kind of thing. Number two, don't go straight for Brad Pitt. Find people who are at your level. Growing at the same pace as somebody else is great. Don't find somebody who is so famous they don't have time to work with you. Sometimes you should pay people. Sometimes you are all gaining an equal amount, so don't stress about that. But if you're really going to get a lot out of it, consider paying people. Don't make people do a lot of work if all you want is for them to tweet about your project. There was a day at the beginning of like Kickstarter, for example, where people would be like, we're going to add a stretch goal where the double clicks will write a song about our project, at $50,000. And then that song is only going out to like 10 backers. At a certain point, nobody's going to listen to it. And it's like, it seemed like all you really wanted me to do was tweet about the project. You didn't need to make me write a song. Make sure you're asking for the right reasons and that the art is the goal. And write short emails with deadlines. Nobody wants to be the person that decides what you're having for dinner, but that somebody's saying, oh, it's fine. Whatever you want is fine. I don't care what we have for dinner, right? That person is not helping anyone. You need to be the person who makes choices. I'm going to look at this question in the chat here. Would participating in multi-animator projects like those made by the Aaron Hunter's Warriors fans be a good idea? I love this question. So these big collaborations, that's exactly what I'm talking about. If as a participant, you need to figure out what your victory condition would be, right? Is your victory condition getting to collaborate with a lot of animators? In which case, yes, you're probably going to meet a lot of animators, especially if you make an effort to meet animators doing that project. Is your goal having every single person who watches that video be your new fan? That's probably not going to happen. But you are going to get your art in front of eyes. And if your art is in front of those eyes and you promote that project in a way that leads back to the other stuff you're making, then chances are when people find you, they're going to stick around. If this is the only animation project you get, then it's probably that you've ever done in your whole life, then chances are when people see it, they're not going to go follow you or back your Kickstarter or whatever, because they don't have anything else about you to learn about. I hope that helps. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions. So here is your homework in the world of collaboration. Think about who is a creator who you could work with and provide value to. For example, whose audience would also like what you do? I've worked with a lot of authors as a musician, and I recommend thinking about that kind of thing. Like, you are not a full, nobody in the world can do everything. So I'm a musician. I can't do visual art, or there are plenty of visual artists who can't write or don't feel comfortable writing a lot. Who can you find that you can do something that they can't do, and you can provide that service for free, and they can provide you a service for free? That is a really, really helpful way to think about it. And it also means that you are not, I don't think that anybody is in competition. That's why there's a boat here. Rising tide raises all boats. But you're finding people who haven't been looking for you. And I think that's because they've been off looking at music instead of books, that kind of thing. Number two, what could you do to make it easy to work with you? Number three, set a deadline and reach out. I recommend starting with something like these lists. Like, just make an Instagram carousel of the 5 books that inspired you to make your book, and make sure some of the books on that list are people who have fewer followers than you, so that you're providing value to them by comparing them to your book and to a more famous book, right? That is an easy and wonderful way to start. Community. All right, this is step 2. I'm talking a lot, everybody, and my head's getting warm, but I hope you're having a good time. And if I start talking nonsense, which I sometimes do, please feel free to ask me to repeat. So what does this mean when I talk about it? I mean, you're going to go find a community that exists, an audience for some piece of art, and share art that they will like based on a shared interest. So think about what your art contains. For example, I have a short story about a superhero, and her deal is that she works in an escape room. The theme of the story is about how our culture kind of disposes of childless women after they turn 30. And it's like a funny, we all try, but it's trying to go for like a Douglas Adams kind of tone, right? And then you go find people who gather around those things. In the case of this, that might be find people who are talking about escape rooms on hashtags, find Facebook groups for people who are, child-free or organizations, because that's what my book is about. Find subreddits of people who are looking for funny sci-fi. I bet there's like a Douglas Adams subreddit. Look for IRL events. Now, I know that not all of us are doing IRL events, but think about in the future, where are these meetup groups of people who like to talk about escape rooms, or people who like to think about queer stories, for example. Blog post comment sections, large fandoms. Basically, what is art that people who would really like your art also appreciate? Like, maybe you make a playlist for one of your characters. Write down all of those things, and let's go find those people and share your art with them. Before we go to the next slide, I'm going to read this comment. What if the thing you really need most is just a person that can be kind of an emotional structural support, like telling you are done when you get stuck, or adding more and more detail, or kicking you in the ass when you get stuck next to not getting anything done? This is a really good question. It sounds like what you need less is a class, and more like an accountability coach or an accountability partner. Accountability coach, they exist. It's something that I do, but also you can probably start yourself a little Discord or friendship of people who are like, we all agree every Monday we're going to set a goal and complete a task. I actually have this in my Discord. We call it the Monday New Thing Project, where it's just, we have a separate channel for excuses, and I never read the excuses channel. but your job is to set a goal and achieve that goal. And I think setting deadlines a little bit publicly so that you feel a little bit of shame can help me at least get things done. Alva Cat, if you want a link to my Discord, feel free to message me on Discord. I'm in there and in the Rainbow Space Magic group. But you could probably create a Rainbow Space Magic one. Okay, so here are some examples of community. Number one, this song is about Dungeons and Dragons. People who like Dungeons and Dragons also listen to this podcast. This podcast has a subreddit. So let's go post this song in this subreddit. Here's another one. My art has a real oceanic vibe. So my local aquarium might want me to play a song at their next open house. Here's another one. This story is about gay robots and found family. My favorite podcast has a lot of gay nerdy fans. This podcast has a Facebook fan group just for the gay nerds. These are different kind of flow charts. And I'm curious if you can think of something for your art that might do the same kind of thing. Here are some examples. Starting on the left here, Siren in the Sea, she's just a genius artist, and she made this song, this whole album that was basically songs to listen to in the bathtub. And then she went on Spotify, she searched for every single playlist that had the word bathtub in it, and she went and messaged the people who created those playlists to add her song. So it was like, this is exactly my community, the exact kind of people who don't already know about me, but who are gathering around the kind of things I care about. And she got on those playlists and she did a really phenomenal job. This thing in the middle here is a blog post. And the reason I'm sharing this blog post is that for a very long time, this was probably in the top 5 traffic sources to my band's website, because a fan of ours named Brendan posted a link to our video in the comments of a blog post about a different video. This audience was there like, we want to watch D&D music videos, and our fan was like, well, here's another one. And I will say, I'm not against having some fan advocates that you ask to do stuff like this for you. I have a lot of fan advocates. I have a Discord, and I'll say things like, well, it would be really cool if anybody has some time to nominate my show for an award today. And here's all you need to do it. If you have fans who care deeply about you and care about you growing your audience so you can make more art, well, that's absolutely ideal. This picture on the left here is to remind me to tell you this story. There is an artist named Matt, and what he did is he would go to shows of bands that played music that fans of his music would also like, so similar music. And he would hand out free CDs, do you remember CDs? In the line of that show. So he would find the people who got in line really early to go see this band. These are people who are ready to be super fans. And he'd say, hi, do you want to be friends? Do you want to hear about my music? Here's a CD. And that's brilliant. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I mean, there is a similar world, right? Where if you have a chapbook or something that you can hand out, or a zine, even a zine with your short story in it, hand out to people who are waiting in line for the next big, Patrick Rothfuss reading or whatever, right? And they probably have some time at their seat waiting for Pat to start. Can they just read your short story while they're waiting? And if they like that story, it's not going to be for all of them, but some of them are really going to like it. Just put a little link on the last page or whatever so they can follow you forever. So here are my rules for community. First of all, be genuine and learn the language. So by this, I mean, I've been telling you to post in a Facebook group or post on a subreddit, go to an event and pitch yourself. You don't want to show up somewhere where you don't have any idea what's going on and just ask them for money or just ask them for attention, right? Make sure it's something you genuinely care about, and spend a few days reading posts, looking at the Facebook wall and see if this is a good fit and how people talk to each other. One of the best ways to get fans is to be an active fan. So I'm a big fan of McElroy podcasts, and very luckily I have had some drift off from McElroy fans into my bands, and I think it helps that I really do care about them and their art. Number 3, be an unexpected discovery. This is something that I think is really, really powerful. Um, if you are a sci-fi author and you spend all your time pitching to people at sci-fi book conventions and sci-fi book subreddits and sci-fi book Facebook groups and sci-fi book events, that's great. But that's not unexpected. On the other hand, if you go to like a Pride event and you say, hey, have you checked out this sci-fi story? There may be people there who never realized that there were sci-fi books with queer stories in them, right? And you're going to be a really unexpected and exciting discovery to those people. Those are the people who are going to follow you forever. People who didn't know they could go to a sci-fi convention. So I recommend thinking about places you can be an unexpected discovery. What's just happened? There we go. All right. Here are the examples. Here on the left, this is a picture of my mom's art. My mother is a wonderful lady, and she sets up art shows with her art in places where there aren't art shows. There are lots of walls in this world that don't have art on them. You know what I mean? And she'll put up her art there in little signs, and sometimes people buy them, and I think that's really wonderful. Here on the right, the new Double Clicks video is a Steven Universe inspired non-binary video game delight. So this was a project that we spent a lot of money on hiring. I think we hired 10 or 12 different non-binary animators to make this video. And it is very Steven Universe inspired, not directly, but that was the way we went. And this is the only time I've ever really found Facebook ads to work. It was such a direct analog that I was able to just basically promote the video to fans of Steven Universe right on Facebook. And then also it got some coverage in places like IO9, where people see the word Steven Universe, they think, I like Steven Universe, that's part of my identity, I'll watch this other thing. Then here on the bottom, this is a post that actually worked back in the day, where I would post about my events in the Portland subreddit. So just, I know that people who are on this Portland subreddit are very nerdy, and they might like my show. And some of those people who came to the show because of this event or this post are fans to this day. I have some water. All right. So here's your homework. Mind map. Oh gosh, I love a mind map. So put the name of your book, put the name of your short story, of your 3D art, of your crochet, whatever, right in the middle. And then let's see, what are all of the things that make up your thing? What is everything, every culture, every subculture, every fandom that influenced the art that you're making and influenced you as a person? Who are you and what does your art contain? And then think about, where do people gather around those things, in person or online? I mean, honestly, if I was a more social person, I would probably already be at these places, right? I would be at the local queer meetups and stuff like that. But to me, I have to have a reason to do it, because I do not like leaving my house. So finding these things that where people go to gather around that stuff, these communities exist everywhere. You are not alone. And I think that's really wonderful. So find those communities. How can you provide value to those communities with your art? I have written fan songs about many things. I have, tried to make art that would be valuable. Like you can see here, my mom is making the room prettier by putting art on the wall. How can you provide value to those communities? Learn the language and share. That's your job. All right. Now, I can't for the life of me remember why there is a lemur for this whole connection section, but I think it's important that we all just look at this cute picture. So there you go. Connection. What does this mean? So obviously all of these community connection, these are just shorthands for a much larger strategy. But for me, connection means you grab an audience by creating new art for them based on a shared interest. So this is basically fan art. And as we all know, fan art is very valuable. Fan art is something that most popular culture is made of fan art at this point. Good Omens is Bible fan art, basically. So we have no shame in the world of fan art, but it's also a very effective shorthand to find your people. If you like this thing, you might like my thing. Oh gosh, here's an example. This is one of my favorite tweets. All right. I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. I am 4 eels, never meant to make your daughter cry. I am several fish and not a guy. Really good tweet from back in the day. Here is a Dami Lee comic based on that tweet. So Dami Lee is the best. And they created these little 4-panel comics based on popular tweets, which was an incredible way for people to find Dami Lee, because look at this, like, this is hilarious on its own. But also, if I've read that tweet, I'm like, oh my God, that's that tweet, but now it's a whole comic. Does anybody else think this is funny? I think it's the best, and I think about it literally all the time. So this is kind of, it's kind of a collaboration, right? This person wrote it, this person illustrated it, but without the without the Josh here having to even think about the fact that they were collaborating. It happens anyway, and they're credited, and it's a whole thing. So I recommend figuring out what that looks like. Here are a couple more examples. Upper left here, this is Comedy Bang Bang. This is a podcast, and they used to every episode play a song by a fan. So my band would submit lots of songs. The song had to be like was for the section of the show at the end where they would do plugs. So you'd write a plugs theme. You'd write it specifically for them, and it would take time, but it also meant that your song was getting on this huge podcast, which is amazing. Here at the bottom, this is a cover. We didn't do a lot of cover songs, but when we did, they were things that we knew our audience would like. Anybody know about Trogdor? Give me some consummate V's in the chat if you've heard of Trogdor. Yes, thank you. Then that becomes a thing where, like, well, we cover news related to Trogdor. Absolutely. Strong Bad. Absolutely. Good. We got the Strong Bad fans in the house. We love it. So that really helped us. And then when people watch that video, they go to our channel that has over 100 original songs as well, so they're going to be having that stuff recommended to them. Then here on the right, this is Louis Zong, who is an incredible animator, an incredible storyteller, a songwriter. It makes all kinds of their own things, but they also every once in a while will make an animation based on a podcast. And people who like that podcast love these animations, and then they might, not all of them, but some of them are going to keep following all the way down to everything that Louis does. And I think that's great. So here are my rules for connection. Do it because you love it. I wouldn't recommend getting really deeply into, Night Vale if you don't like Night Vale, just because you think it'll make you famous. If it's not genuine, it's not going to work out. Don't cover songs you don't like. Don't write fan fiction about something that you don't care about, because that's just not going to help you. But do it because you love it. Manage your expectations and research them. So sometimes I work with artists who will be like, well, I covered this song, and this artist hasn't reposted it. I covered it specifically so the original artist would retweet it, and they didn't. Do a little bit of research. Does this artist repost stuff that people make about them? If not, then they're probably not going to do it for you. So find artists who are interested in building community like that. Done is better than perfect. This is my third rule, and this is my rule for everything. And it sounds like some of you need somebody to tell you this. Make something and move on. Don't spend hours and hours on something, especially if the victory condition is relatively low, right? All of these things, I'm not saying work really hard on one of these things for 6 months. I'm saying community, connection. What was my other one? These are things that I want you to spend like a week on maximum, right? And then move on to the next one and do it again. So what is your favorite thing that you think your audience will also like? This is fun too, if maybe they don't already like it. What can you create and share that other fans of that thing will find fun, valuable, and cool? That makes sense? Are we making sense? I think we are. Gonna have a little bit more water. Let me know if there are any more questions. before I move on. All right. So yeah, here we are. Here's our little robot audience. They're accessible to us, they're engaged, and there are enough of them to ask for money. Now, I have a whole other class about Kickstarter, about structuring a Kickstarter page, about Patreon. I have a lot of thoughts about all of these things. But I today my goal is just to give you a few assignments just involved in finding the audience that will pay you for your art, because that is the most important thing to do first, right? You've got to find an audience before you launch a Kickstarter page. So many times people come to me and they say, well, I just launched the Kickstarter for my book. I'm asking for $10,000 and nobody's backed it yet. It's like, well, that's because you didn't prepare. I usually say, let's have 10 weeks of solid work. I'm not saying full time, but 10 weeks of maybe 5 hours a week that you're working on preparing your audience for a Kickstarter before you launch that Kickstarter. Don't launch it and then try to figure out where your backers are. It's just the same thing as you're not going to show up at Thanksgiving and ask for $5,000 if you've never met that family before, right? Let's meet that family. Let's buy them Christmas presents for a few years. Let's all have some fun together and learn each other's recipes. And then when you need $5,000, they'll probably help you out. That is my presentation. I think I'm going to stop my share. If anybody else has any questions, please let me know, or find me on the internet. I'm Laser the Boy everywhere. I have all kinds of art, and I'm also at lasercampaigns.com, where you can book free sessions just to do one-on-one stuff. What's up, Andy?
Well, if this tells you anything, I was like, why are they wrapping up? I was like, oh, we're at time.
Listen, I'm glad.
So
it
does that help?
was so much.
Helps
I
you
always try to cram in everything.
Yeah, this is a topic near and dear to my heart as well. I have a podcast as well. Happy International Podcast Day to all you podcasters.
Yes.
And as a supporter of yourself, that's part of the reason I wanted to I'll plug your book again. Even though it says it's for musicians, I do highly recommend it for those who are in other creative fields. I bought it. I'm not a musician, and I felt it was there's still a lot of stuff that traveled over to writing and to other things. So let's see if there's any questions in the audience. If not, I can ask you. Aha. Valerie wants to know, having written a book, what are some aspects of promoting a book that you find wildly different than promoting your music?
Oh, wildly different. There are a lot of things that are similar, and I'm going to say that just as I'm thinking about what's different. Books are one of the things that I found with a book and a musical album. Both of those things are things that are really exciting when they're new, and then they kind of immediately lose their news hook. They immediately lose the interest. So doing a lot of work on pre-orders, doing a Kickstarter, that's a really good way to make sure you sell the most of them that you can, because as soon as it's out, it doesn't really have value anymore. And there's a lot of psychological reasons for that. So when I released my book, I released it with a publisher, but I still did a Kickstarter pre-order so that I could do a little tour and to sell t-shirts. But the main reason I did that, to be honest, was because, well, first of all, if people buy the book directly from me, I get more money than if it's on Amazon. And I didn't get very much money for writing a book, because I don't know if you know about this. Nobody spends. Anyway, but also it meant that it was an event, right? It's the advantage of doing a book tour or any tour, even if you have to pay for it yourself, is that you're making it an event, and an event is setting a deadline. And people don't do stuff without deadlines. I certainly don't, and I'm sure, to be honest, I bet 90% of the people here also don't do things without deadlines, including buying a book. Now, what's different? I mean, I did find that the drop off of the book was much faster than music, and I think there are a lot of ways that you can continue selling stuff if you're making content about the content of your book. But I found once it was sold, there was really a lot of, you have to individually work for each sale, whereas music can be on playlists, it can be on Spotify. But it is a little bit hard to, you have to really work on thinking of like, what is the content I can share? Because music, you can make a little video, you can make a little video. Books, that's a big ask. It's a bigger it's like getting people to listen to a podcast for the first time. People don't want to click on something that they can't fully absorb immediately. Just psychologically, it's not as safe and comfortable. So it certainly is tricky. I hope that helps, Valerie. Valerie, I know that you do all kinds of work. Valerie's actually taken a class with me, if this is the Valerie, I think. And they're out there hustling.
Uh, Live cat, I think is how you pronounce it. If you can't really handle the stress of a community because of reasons, is it okay to hire someone to pretend to be you?
This is a really good question. I would say if having an online community, having a fan base is stressful to you, probably crowdfunding, content creation, being an influencer, all of these things, probably not for you. I think probably if you are one of those people who wants to hermit up and have somebody else promote your stuff, then you're probably more suited for something like traditional publishing, where there is a system of publicists and editors and stuff who will do that work for you. Because yes, you can hire people to do social media. It is never going to be as good as you doing it yourself, because the thing we like about social media is like when you're holding your phone and looking at TikTok or reading a newsletter, it is a one-on-one experience between you and that creator, right? You're looking at their face and their face is looking at your face. And the more intimate that can be, the more it feels like a person just talking to you, the better. I will say that one of the tricks I use to be less uncomfortable with that is to think of my audience as just one person whose name I have given, right? I've named my one fan. Their name is Sylvan. They live in Atlanta. They're 23 years old and they love absolutely everything I do, right? And I make art for them. Now, is that person real? No, but it is a lot easier to talk to one person than it is to talk to the internet. So I would say if you can't handle the stress of a community, you also might be a good candidate for a newsletter, because it's you're basically talking to yourself and you don't have to put your face out there and you don't have to deal with comments. But if your goal is to create a community, you either need to be part of it or you need to get big enough that it can sustain itself. And that might be a thing of, okay, if I'm not the kind of person who can do, be the content creator and be the self-employed person, it means that there are paths that have existed for years that were created specifically for people like you.
Any other questions?
Angie, I like your button board.
Oh, thank you. That over there.
Yeah, that's great.
When I started it, they were in separate sections, but as it got crowded more and more, I'm just like sticking it wherever I have room.
I finally got one of those for all my enamel pins, and it has really changed my life. Of like, now I can look at all the things I like.
Exactly.
They're all friends, and I can, it's very nice and visual.
I want to say there are several double click buttons up there that I've gotten.
You make a lot of buttons. They're fun.
I love buttons. They're mobile stickers.
Exactly. Reusable mobile stickers.
Exactly. So I know you had originally expressed interest in performing. I don't know if that's still of interest.
Oh no, I don't have any of my stuff. That's not.
Okay, then never mind then. Forget I said anything. I didn't say anything. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, let's Monique, if you want to come on and we can open it up to the Hangouts.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to stick around and chat for a little bit, not too long, but a little bit, you're welcome to do so. I'm going to stop the recording right now, so that